Ministers have defended rejecting a report which advised that counter-extremism strategy should be broadened to include, among other things, violent environmentalism and the far left. It comes after parts of the report, which was commissioned by the Home Office and drawn up in the wake of last summer's riots, were leaked to the right-leaning think tank Policy Exchange. Here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
After the bleak, gruesome murders of 3 children in Southport last summer, a town was left to mourn, to reflect. Society was left to reflect too on how it happened, why it happened, and the risks we face.
We're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme, and they need to be factored in.
Before the murders in Southport and later riots, the government asked for its officials to look into the threats from extremism we face. The report has been leaked to the Policy Exchange think tank, who invited me in to read it. Well, I've now been reading these leaked papers, and they set out the threats that we face posed by environmental extremism and left-wing extremism, misogyny and conspiracy theories, and a fascination with violence. And broadly, they say, in most instances, the harm is pretty limited, apart from the far right, and in particular, Islamist extremism. But the thrust of it suggests widening the government's horizons to other threats, which sparks a debate about priorities.
The police and our security agencies are only ever going to have a finite level of resource, so how they focus that resource and who they focus on matters enormously.
And this was the focus in the Commons.
94% of terrorism-caused deaths since 1999 were caused by Islamist terrorism. Does he agree that combating Islamist terrorism is more important than policing the manosphere?
The Security Minister agreed Islamist terrorism is an overwhelmingly more grave threat than anything else. And, alarmingly, he said this.
Some 162 people were referred to Prevent last year for concerns relating to school massacres. And our Five Eyes counter-terror partners have also warned about growing radicalisation of teenagers and young people.
But motivations for violence can, some argue, be spur of the moment. The Children's Commissioner for England reckons the young people involved in last summer's riots were driven by curiosity, thrill and distrust of the police. Risks, violence, extremism, terrorism, how each are viewed can determine how each are dealt with, and that matters to us all. Chris Mason, BBC News.